like to introduce you to Amy Joran. Amy is the Economic Development Officer for Corvallis-Benton County.
Welcome. So I'd like to take the opportunity to introduce my partner, Jerry Mitchell. He and I are business partners together. He'll be introducing our guest today. But before we do that, I want to kind of give you an idea of what the rules of engagement are going to be for this conversation we're going to have with our panelists. We're going to be walking around the room with microphones so that we can hear all the questions, and we know how important they're going to be to each one of our panelists. But we're not going to allow this to become a pitch-a-bitch session. If you got some anxieties about past performance issues that happened in your lifetime, I don't want to hear about that. I want this to be educational and informative because we're really fortunate to have these people here. So please show them the dignity and respect that they deserve, and I know you will. So Jerry, with that, if you come up, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Well, I'm very pleased to introduce our panelists and give you just a bit of perspective on their backgrounds, and then when they come up, they will tell you a little bit more about their backgrounds and interests. Cheryl Twete is Community Development Director at the City of Beaverton and is responsible for the planning and building divisions. Cheryl's been involved in several of the biggest real estate developments in the region. I first met her in the early days of the South Waterfront development. And before coming to Beaverton, she was at Metro, where she worked on the Convention Center Headquarters Hotel project. Mark Clemons is the Economic Development Director for the City of Hillsboro, and has been described as a strategist and visionary, is focused on business recruitment and infrastructure development in Hillsboro's North Industrial area, the downtown, the South Hillsboro and Amber Glen community planning, and the vision for more intensive development at Tanasbourne. And Brad Fletcher with a local brokerage said that in the 20 years he has known Mark, he's always been a deal maker. Before coming to Hillsboro, Mark was at Group McKenzie, an architecture planning and engineering firm. Chris Harder is joining us from Portland Development Commission, where he is the Economic Development Director and oversees the City of Portland's business development activities and programs to support international trade and entrepreneurship. Before coming to Oregon, he was Director of Economic Analysis for the North Carolina Department of Commerce. And I want to add also that, backtracking to Cheryl, that she is very involved in the redevelopment in downtown Beaverton and the Creekside Master Plan. So with that, please join me here on the stage, and please start by giving us a little better description of...
So because we're doing this during lunch, we're going to make it really relaxed. So they're going to deliver their food up there. So try to be cognizant of the fact when you're asking questions, make sure you ask the person that has their mouth full, okay?
So Mark, can you lead off with a bit of a self-introduction and tell us what's going on in Hillsboro these days?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Mark Clemons. I'm Economic Development Director in Hillsboro. Pleased to be here. Thanks for the invitation. What's going on in Hillsboro? I think the first question, can I answer the first question first and then just go that way? Okay. So the first question had to do with business recruitment and business retention, sort of how do we do business, I think was the first question. Hillsboro is a community that prides itself on being business friendly and open for business, and I've been active in Hillsboro for probably most of my career, about 30 years. I was at PDC before, and I was in the 80s and 90s and was involved in business recruitment, international investment in a lot of what I was selling at PDC was actually selling Hillsboro. And then as a consultant, I worked a lot in Hillsboro in master planning and industrial development planning, and now as the Economic Development Director, I'm working on the same sorts of things. We have an aggressive business retention and business recruitment program in Hillsboro, one that focuses on business calls and calling on companies, but I think the biggest thing we do for business development in general is just have a really, really good process. Our planning department, our building department, our public works department, basically all of our efforts are to get to yes for companies. We're trying to get you in the ground as fast as possible, get you open as fast as possible. And so we see economic development as being basically a foundational responsibility of the city. And it's supported politically, which is fantastic. We don't have to explain the importance of economic development in Hillsboro when we're doing projects. It's what one of the reasons we're there is to create quality of life, and quality of life, the old lingo goes, quality of life starts with a job, and that's really understood in Hillsboro pretty aggressively. And maybe with that I'll stop, and we can get back to some of the bigger recruitment stuff we're doing too if you want.
Sure, thanks, Mark. Chris, can you do a bit of an introduction and segue right into that first question, if you could?
Sure. So Chris Harder, Economic Development Director. Like Mark said, thank you for the invitation. Just a bit about PDC. These two know it because they've both worked at PDC. We can be a bit of a complex organization. So we have three main bodies of work. We have our urban renewal redevelopment work. We have community development, which works a lot in our East Portland neighborhoods and Northeast Portland. And then we have economic development, which is actually the team that I manage, which is our focus around trade sector job growth, international trade, small business and entrepreneurship type support. So just to get a framework for when I answer questions, kind of the angle that I'm coming from, at least from the PDC perspective. I would say economic development. I think one thing you'll find is our region is diverse, and we actually have different strategies, and I think that's a strength. So what Mark may do in Hillsboro, we may not exactly do in Portland, but I think we have lots of options in our region. So we don't do heavy proactive business recruitment. It's not a strategy that has been particularly impactful for us. We've invested more in certainly our central city, where we in infrastructure and quality of life, quality of place type investments, and we've invested a lot around entrepreneurship and small business support, in addition to kind of prioritizing kind of existing business versus external company recruitment. So that's kind of a bit of the framework of how we prioritize. It doesn't mean we don't do recruitment, but we're definitely responsive versus proactive in that sense.
Thanks, Chris. And let me add that this was not intended to be a PDC alumni event, but having met many municipal econ dev people throughout the region and throughout the state, I'm always amazed at how many PDC folks I run across.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Cheryl, Twete, Community Development Director for the City of Beaverton. And on that note, Jerry, earlier today I was at a housing focus group conversation, and I think half the people in that room were PDC alum as well. So it's an organization that has grown and evolved over the years, and quite frankly has had significant contributions to what's happened in the region. It's grown a lot of talent, and that talent is dispersed all over the region. My hat is a little bit different than Mark and Chris's in that I'm the Community Development Director. Community Development is our main line department that deals with the business development and neighborhood organizations in the city of Beaverton. I have an economic development manager, Alma Flores. Many of you, some of you may have met her. And she is our point person for driving our economic development agenda. We also have planning, building, urban renewal, sustainability, transportation, and community development block grant, all under one umbrella department called community development. That may sound like a lot of jargon to you, but what that really means is we're more integrated in service delivery by having those functions all within one department. Beaverton is a first-tier suburb. And I would tell you what's exciting about my job, I've been there about 10 months, is we're trying to redefine what is Beaverton's future. It's long been known as a really nice place to live, a good place to raise a family, good schools, but we're also a place of business. And we're also trying to create a downtown core and really evolve into a more mature suburb that has a wider variety of services and businesses in our community. Speaking more specifically on economic development, I would say that our strategy is very similar to what you heard Chris talk about a minute ago, in that the bulk of our focus is on business retention and expansion. We engage in regional recruitment when there's an opportunity, but we don't go off on our own. We participate with Greater Portland, Inc. and through Business Oregon, and when they let us know of potential leads, we really evaluate, do we have much to offer this company? If we do, we put together a unique proposal for them. If we don't, we say thank you very much. We're going to keep focusing on the businesses that are here today, that want to grow and need our services. We try very hard to focus on the strengths of Beaverton because, unlike Portland or Hillsboro, we're a much smaller community and we don't have that much available industrial and employment zone property. So I think from a development standpoint, we are looking more towards redevelopment of our land. We had so little vacant property today to serve the employment industries. We try to have really good business relationships with folks in the business community. We do a lot of meetings. We provide a lot of information, a lot of resource. A lot of times we're the first stop for businesses when they're thinking about a change. And we try very hard to give them accurate, complete information and help them make that decision. We also have limited tools of what we provide, financially speaking, for the business community. We have, I think, a much smaller array of tools than what PDC has to offer. They're targeted, and they're things that we think we can deliver on and add value to the businesses in our community. We focus on enterprise zone, e-commerce zone, workforce hiring and training, and import-export bank. And so I guess I'll leave it at that.
So Jerry, let me chime in here. So I've had the privilege of working with all three of your agencies for a variety of different projects that we were working on together. And Mark's office was absolutely wonderful when we first stopped in there to see where we could develop a hotel in Hillsboro. We did not know what we were getting ourselves into because coming from down south, I had no idea that the municipality had a different way of looking at their zoning and code requirements that were really important for us to understand, because they were able to circumvent the no growth people by being able to manipulate their zoning. And so where you would not believe you could put a hotel actually was welcoming us to build a hotel. So by stopping into his agency and talking with them, we got to find out what is the vision for the city of Hillsboro? What are their aspirations? Where's their growth? Where they're planning to grow and why? And what kind of incentives are there available to us to want to develop what we're hoping to develop? And so by doing that and talking with his office, they steered us in the right direction in town, the right people to be talking to, and the appropriate lands that we should be looking at. So it saved us a ton of time, a lot of money, and a lot of heartache by being guided by that, because the rules of engagement in the city of Hillsboro are completely different than the city of Beaverton and completely different than the PDC. So stopping in there to talk to them is going to save you a ton of time and a ton of heartache when you think you got what you think you need, only to find out you should have done a little bit more homework. So with saying that, I'll hand it over to you, Jerry.
Let me just say that in terms of the context, I mean, I think the context for economic development in the region, and Chris hit upon this, and so did Cheryl. And Chris's comment that we all have unique attributes to contribute to the development of our region. And there is a couple of umbrella organizations. There's one, the State Economic Development Department, that we all work collaboratively with. The other group is a fairly new group, and you may not have heard of them, and Cheryl mentioned them, which is called Greater Portland, Inc. And Greater Portland, Inc. has been around in different forms for about 5 years, and in their current form for about 3, I think. It's a public-private partnership. They raise in the neighborhood of a little less than $2 million annually. They have a board of directors, which is made up of private executives and public mayors from around the region. And their job is to basically do the regional strategy for economic development, which they're doing right now, and also to handle much of the marketing and recruitment activities for the region as a whole. And so each of us can focus on making our community the best place for business and the niches that we can fit into. We'll get into this a little bit more. Hillsboro has land. It's one of the things we've got. You know, Portland has a little bit of land. Beaverton has no land. So it's not like we don't compete with each other by any means whatsoever. We work collaboratively together to meet every business need is going to be different, and each one of us will have something to offer probably that meets uniquely that company's desires. I mean, on the software side, on the urban side, there's a lot of companies that are now want to locate in downtown Portland, which is they're not going to come to Hillsboro, they're going to downtown Portland. You know, smaller software companies may want to locate in Beaverton. If you're a large 100-acre user, you got to go to Hillsboro. So there's a system in place, and we don't compete with each other. We collaborate with each other to meet regional and statewide goals.
Thanks, Mark. That's great perspective. And we've pretty well covered the first question. Let's move into the second question. You've already touched on parts of this. What resources might your city offer a developer who is pursuing a business relocation opportunity? And I think just a conversation among the panelists would be a good way to approach this question.
Well, I'll just piggyback the story that was told about Mark in kind of facilitating a business or development in our city. That's our job, is to navigate sometimes the complexities of our city and you know, whether it's a development project or a business relocation that can touch different bureaus. So I would say, you know, one of the things that we're responsible for, and I'll just answer on, you know, PDC, some of that may be me, some of that may be my colleagues, is making sure that that there's a clear path forward and can kind of point folks in the right direction. So that's just a general customer service perspective. I think that we all three in our different roles play on different levels.
Can you give an example or two of what that might look like?
Yeah, I mean, so, you know, a development project coming in may be looking for a tenant, so we would have folks on our economic development side working to identify potential tenants. There's obviously, in some cases, there's going to be zoning impacts. There could be infrastructure needs. Some of those come from PDC, some of those would come from partner bureaus. There are incentives at times, those types of things. So, and I think not a solution very rarely comes from one bureau, at least within the city of Portland. It's part of our job when there's business interest to make sure that that's perhaps a single point of contact or a clear path forward as we kind of maneuver the different assets and bureau responsibilities. Does that make sense?
That's been my experience over the years, is that PDC does serve in that role. Is that an accurate impression as sort of a unified point of contact at times?
Yeah, certainly when there's business interest. And then I think in general, our urban renewal districts facilitate that, which kind of prioritize where some of our resources go, particularly how we invest in infrastructure. Our urban renewal districts kind of play a coordinating role for us there, and that gives us some authority to guide other parts of the city when it's within a district. Only, I think it's 15% of our city is in an urban renewal district. Now, many high-profile elements of that are. But the combination, just the kind of business development, business service, and then the fact that we manage 11 different urban renewal districts provides PDC with kind of that role throughout the city.
And I believe that state law says that the maximum area of a city that can be in an urban renewal district is 15%, coincidentally.
12 or 15, I can't remember.
It's
15, yeah.
So when you see in your respective cities that there's an asset group that isn't really being represented to its highest and best, is there a way in which you incentivize that? I mean, if there's something you'd like to see specifically built in an area because you feel as though you don't have enough of that particular asset group in your area, is there a way you can incentivize it, or is there a way that you build a public-private collaboration on getting those particular products built?
I would answer that by saying that I believe all of us have target industries that we try to approach, we try to encourage, and that's where, quite frankly, the bulk of our resources go, whether it's staff time or financial tools or other kinds of information tools. There's a reason why we have these target industries. Beaverton has 5, for example. It's because we have a base of businesses existing in the community. We have these niches, if you will. So we're willing and open to talking to just about any business enterprise that's interested in the city of Beaverton. But I think it's important to understand that from an economic vitality standpoint, we target jobs, target businesses that bring in the best paying jobs, most stable jobs, living wage kinds of jobs, because overall those have so much more benefit for the community.
But I think the asset-based question is a good question, because I think a number of us, from an economic development perspective, will sort of look at jobs and
Okay.
what we refer to as traded sector, which is, working with companies who bring new capital into the region. So from a pure economic development perspective, I think that's the focus. So it's manufacturing companies or professional service companies that bring revenue into the region. But from an asset base, I think all of us are also, you use the example of hotels. While we may not have incentives for hotels, we certainly would be open and meeting and things like that. We haven't yet started aggressively, I think, going after hotels or going after retail. And one of the fascinating things is in this region, we don't go after retail because there's no sales tax. If you go to California or you go to any other sales tax state in the region, state in the country, and you look at their economic development programs, you'll see a strong emphasis on recruiting retail to their communities. We don't do that here simply because it doesn't bring any revenue, tends to bring traffic, tends to bring externalities, which are a challenge in a confined urban growth area. So, you don't get a lot of love if you're a retailer on from an economic developer. Sorry. But from housing would be another asset. Apartment. I mean, Orinco Station is an example of where we are, engaged with a developer who's doing 1,200 new units of housing in Orinco Station, and there's a development agreement, and we're helping fund a public plaza that's part of that. So yeah, I think each of our communities will respond effectively to different asset classes that are basically build our community, build housing, build jobs, build recreational opportunities.
Thanks, Mark.
Well, and I'll chime in on that. Is that you hooked us up with these planners that sat us down and explained to us that you have to look at our zoning is not the same as you're going to find in any other municipality in Hillsboro. We have properties that have a vast array of mixed-use capabilities that you may not be taking into consideration if you're only looking at specific types. And so we ended up developing an industrial site with incredible flexibility attached to it, which we would have never known about had your group not sat us down and said, hey, we need to show you some things. Plus, you're changing your zoning requirements in Hillsboro, and that master plan just got announced, am I correct, in the last couple of months, where
the Tannisbourne community plan?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a whole nother conversation. Basically, Tannisbourne, Amber Glen, which you are probably familiar with the area, 185th, Walker Road, that area. A couple of years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, there was a zone change on the Amber Glen portion of Tannisbourne, Amber Glen, and the zone change was to allow really to move it from a business park environment to a more high-density housing development area. And on the Tannisbourne side, which is part of the same, it's a regional center designated by Metro. It's geek talk, but regional centers is basically higher density areas that are served by transit in the region. So that area combined is a regional center. So we're trying to build more retail activity in Tannisbourne itself to support new housing development in Amber Glen.
Thanks, Mark. And Chris, we have a question over here for you.
Sure.
Hi, Chris. My question is, good to know you are not competing or about, working with other, corporations. I mean, the department. My question is actually two questions. The one is the state have a specific, the department, what they call Oregon for Business,
Business Oregon.
colon sales there. And then when we have a new business relocating or thinking about relocating here, so if we contact them, is that the location have to be fall into city of Portland, then do we have to also to talk to you in order to, see if any feasible, locations? And also second question is that location have to be within your PDC, urban renewal district, and then to be really involved if, say, the industrial area or in Northwest over there and on Highway 30th is out of your urban renewal, and then this is better talk to the state, Collins department other than you. And then second question is, do you have some kind of incentive, like a tax and, other, government join the incentive to the new business, like Oregon for Business, that department provide that kind of thing? If you do we have to talk to you in order to know, other than just talk to state?
So I think I would encourage you to personally, if there's a business interested in locating to Oregon, Portland Metro, or Portland, if it's specific to Portland and they want to be downtown Portland, I think the easiest, most direct path is typically to PDC. That's a bit of our jurisdiction. Oftentimes the ones that have, perhaps regional interests and they're trying to source different opportunities, either come through Greater Portland, Inc. or the state of Oregon, and then they help kind of coordinate the different municipalities that may be interested or involved. So we do talk frequently. We have kind of protocols of how we handle those things. Whatever your best connection is, I would go through that perspective. So if there is an interest in the city of Portland, eventually, sites get to that level, that's typically where the handoff to PDC comes when we're talking different properties, kind of more site-specific information or incentives. So eventually, if it reaches that stage, an entity like PDC would be in the lead versus a state of Oregon or a GPI. Now, related to kind of urban renewal, non-urban renewal, certainly our urban renewal districts provide us with resources that are non-urban, but in addition than other parts of the city, that typically goes towards things like infrastructure to help build out commercial office space. At times, we do have various gap financing products that can kind of help put a deal together. So we have participated in that perspective. But no, just because an urban renewal district, actually, I would say a vast majority of our company relocations are outside of urban renewal district, and they tend to tap into what's called our enterprise zone program. We have two of them. One that's kind of more the port industrial area, and then another one that's almost all of East Portland. That's a tax abatement program, both on investment, property, personal included, and then there's an e-commerce program around investments in e-commerce infrastructure. That's a tax credit. That can be in an urban renewal or outside of an urban renewal. And so that's probably our best incentive that we have. We tend not to give many other than small grants to storefronts or stuff like that. We tend not to give other cash incentives outside of the enterprise zone program.
So are you saying I'm familiar with your, every year, every time you renew, those fundings come out and apply to your different zones? So are you saying have to be you designated, those economy zone or whatever the zone name, different
Enterprise
funding.
zone?
Yeah, enterprise zone.
Yeah.
So the funding only apply to we already decided designated zone, right? So if outside that zone for the industrial or for the business have to be, and then those funding not apply to it, there's no flexibility.
So if a property's in the enterprise zone, any company can access the enterprise zone program, and those are there's a boundary or designated properties. Most of in the entire east side of Portland is in one or the other, and Northwest Industrial is in it. That what you're not, in the central east side is even in it, which what typically is not in it is our central business district.
Thank you.
I have a question for Cheryl. Cheryl, what are those 5 top businesses you guys are going after? I don't know if we asked you that question.
No, you didn't. Shoot, this is a pop quiz. So it's food processing, software, electrical manufacturing, apparel and sportswear, and, help me, Mark, what is my fifth? We're too, I'm sorry.
I worry about mine.
Yeah. It's the industries where we think we have locational advantages to be operating and competing, and it's based on the businesses that are there today, the clusters that are there today in the community.
And we have similar, we have 4, again, locational advantages. Most of ours are driven by actually kind of talent advantages, so we have a significant amount of in-migration or at least skill development. So ours would be metals and machinery, which is your kind of industrial base in Portland. At times, food processing is kind of emerging and growing, so we do have quite a few food and beverage brewers in our city. So that's our manufacturing, athletic and outdoor gear and apparel. So it's some of the obvious ones, but it also would include things like Leatherman tools or kind of product side of things. Technology and media, software, but also film and video, digital media is pretty big in Portland, and then clean tech, which is both our professional services side, so our architects, engineers, kind of sustainability planners, but then also on the product side, electric vehicle. We have various water management startups, different kind of clean tech product. We have a question over here.
Mark, would you give your areas of desired growth? And also, is there a place where each of you publish this? Because this room is the place that you guys get these businesses from. And so if they can look somewhere periodically and find out what your favorite child is for the time being, they will bring it to you.
Yeah, it's that thing called a website.
Yeah.
We all got them. I mean, that's the easiest way. Basically, each of us our city have websites. Click on economic development, and you'll find everything you need to know. But probably more importantly, if you just call us, it sort of cuts out the chatter of having to look and go through a website. And when you try to we all have enterprise zones. If you try to understand the enterprise zone from a website, you'll kill yourself. So don't even try. Just give us a call. It can be complicated, and our job is to make it easy, not complicated.
Is there an elevator description of an E zone, an enterprise zone?
Basically, it's up to a 5-year tax abatement on buildings and capital for traded sector businesses.
And we have an e-commerce overlay, which is that, plus we can give a 25% tax credit over 5 years for e-commerce. Basically, just think internet. If you do anything on the internet for infrastructure that's put in there.
And historically, do you find that that E zone is a significant
Yes.
ingredient in making a deal or a project?
It's really the only tool. It's only sort of the only. It's a statewide tool. So the state, in their inimitable wisdom, allows local jurisdictions to forgive our property taxes, and it basically there's a number of them around the state. And so each of us has one, and it's pretty much the only one, enterprise zone, and the other one is the SIP, which is the Strategic Investment Program. So if you have anybody who wants to invest $700 million, $800 million, and more, we're interested in talking. That's the SIP program. That's the large capital investment targeted program that Intel has used 4 times, and because of that program, we have Intel in the state of Oregon.
We have a question over here, too.
On these economic enterprise zones, it sounded like it was if you bought real estate and owned it. Is there a way for tenants
Yes.
to access those benefits?
Yes. So a tenant in a building, their portion of their real estate property tax would apply, as well as their tenant improvement, so their equipment, anything that they're taxed on, either they pay the tax through a triple net lease,
Right.
or they're taxed on their equipment or their improvements in the building, and they receive a tax bill for that. That can be exempted.
Right. Excellent. Thank you.
Well, that was a great discussion. Any more comments from the panel or questions from the audience before we move on?
Connie, you asked what Hillsboros were. High tech and biotech, but it's somewhat irrelevant. I mean, we kind of all share similar ones in the region, and the region has them, and we all tend to focus on the strengths of our local economy, and we all have business outreach programs, and we'll call on companies no matter if they're in those target industries or not. From a recruitment perspective, we obviously build off of our tech cluster related to silicon, and the workforce and the suppliers and all of that. So from that perspective, you basically play off your community strengths.
And so if someone has a business, they can call any of you and you could help them get the right.
Yeah, I think that's almost a way to say it. I mean, if you don't know who to call, you can call anybody in the network and you will get the help. I mean, if you were to call me and say, I have a company that's looking for something, I would make that information available to GPI, who then, so there's a system in place. So don't think of us as competing with one another. Think of us as being here to serve you, to serve your client. I mean, that's why we're here.
Yeah, I'd emphasize that. It's happened both ways, where a company has come in and you kind of learn about kind of what their needs and interests are, and some of them you're like, no, I'm not sure that's quite the fit for Portland. This sounds more like a Hillsboro or Beaverton or Gresham or Vancouver, and the benefit of having their kind of regional network is, we can say, this isn't a high priority for us, but I think it may be a high priority for some other folks, and then that'll get facilitated. I'll just be quite frank, we don't truly care if a business of significant size or any size locates in Hillsboro or Portland. People live and work and commute all over the place. It's better that if our region is kind of vibrant and we offer different kind of niches, like Mark said, right now, I don't have to recruit a single software company. They just flock. They ask for no incentives. They want to know when the next property's up, and we help facilitate that. So those are advantages we have. But if a computer electronics company comes, I'll just say, why don't you talk to Mark? I think Hillsboro is probably the better location for that. So.
And thanks, Chris. Just a point of clarification, Greater Portland, Inc. Includes Vancouver, is that correct?
That's right.
Yes.
7 counties.
Hi.
5
I have a question for Mark. Your Washington County tax incentive for the 7 million up, that kind of business, is that 7 million including the top owner executive? They might invest one for their corporation, big property, say corporation, residential in the rural, in Washington County, Hillsboro. Then there are some facility thinking about in like an office building down. Is that 7 million counting for their that executive relocation?
No, so I threw that number out there. Basically, the SIP is a statewide program And what it does is it caps taxable taxable value, caps what a company will pay taxes on at $100 million. Okay, so basically the rule of thumb is because of depreciation, you basically have to either kind of 4 to 5 time that number to get it to be a realistic number to make that SIP program work. And it's basically going to generally be a heavy manufacturer. It's targeted at capital-intensive industries like the semiconductor industry. And Genentech has used it also in Hillsboro.
Thanks, Mark. I think we're ready to move on to our third question. Is there a need for public-private collaboration to spark new development? Any successful examples?
Yes. The reason we in the public sector like to do public-private partnerships is because it's an opportunity to marry what the private sector can do well and what we, the public sector, can bring to drive us to be able to achieve our goals as a community. Usually the projects that we take on are the tough projects. They're the ones that the market won't do by themselves. And a lot of times the partnership involves coordination, it might involve land assembly, sometimes it involves direct financial resources. But what it really does for the private sector is it brings a partner, a committed partner to the table. So when you work on a public-private partnership, typically it means the community decision makers are in alignment that this is the kind of project you want to try to achieve. And I'm going to take just a second to put a plug in for a request for qualifications that we have out right now. Jerry mentioned it during his intros. It's pretty significant for the city of Beaverton. We have a 4-acre property right at the Beaverton Central Light Rail Station. It's the old Westgate Theater site. Some of you might be familiar with it. Maybe remember going to see movies there many, many years ago. It's had a long, sordid history. And we have just issued this RFQ. We're really excited about redevelopment into a mixed-use project. We're very flexible about what happens here. But for us, it's a chance to complete the Round project and to totally turn that negative image of the Round on its head and to create really a new downtown for the city of Beaverton, because we have sort of a downtown general area, but you don't really know where downtown is when you come to Beaverton. So please take a look. It's on our website. It's pretty exciting. I can tell you that Mayor Doyle and the council are 110% behind this project, and we're looking for some of the best and the brightest development folks in the region to take a look at it.
Well, I could segue right into that. So both Jerry and I have been invited to the mayor's roundtable meeting on the 7th of this month to talk about opportunities in the city of Beaverton. And so we're really excited about that, because a lot of what Cheryl had told us was wishful thinking when we first met with her a few months ago has come to fruition. So I applaud her on her ability to get things done in such a short period of time. That's I think it's a record for a municipality. You know, I would like to put someone on the spot here. I know that she's probably just finishing up her last bite. We've got an idea of what the regional operators have to offer, or regional municipalities. Is there something different that you're experiencing in your community, and what is similar and what is not so similar that you might have to offer in your area?
Hi, so I didn't have a chance to introduce myself earlier, but my name's Amy, and I manage the Business Retention and Expansion Program for the City of Corvallis and Benton County. So a lot of the things that you guys said resonates with what we work on in Corvallis. We have a high-tech industry, we have a beverage industry, we work with enterprise zones, we have our municipal airport. We were making snide comments, I'm surrounded by 2 Corvallis folks, about some of the challenges of working in a small community that you have to be relatively careful when you're talking about recruitment. So I would say that that's the primary difference between what working in a small county like Benton County and Corvallis, that's the difference between that and Hillsboro. So, you know, in some communities, they don't even call economic development because they're so anti-growth. So they call it economic health. And I would say that
that's why I work in Hillsboro.
And I think that one of the primary aspects of Corvallis that's the biggest challenge But also one of the biggest attributes is that people care so much about what goes into their community. So when people care a lot, you can have trouble when you're trying to get something done, when you're recruiting somebody. You have to make sure that they fit the culture of a community. So I think that emphasizing that we're open for business while keeping the businesses that are existing happy is our primary challenge. We also have a sort of interesting historic perspective in Corvallis that, you know, they're not really interested in development. We're trying to change that perspective. It's a long road, but that would be, I'm very envious of the programs that you guys have, but we try to do the best we can, so.
Let me just kind of give the idea. One of the things about what Hillsboro does have is, I said, Hillsboro has land. And Hillsboro has land because the urban growth boundary, and we're not going to go totally, there was a question here about the grand bargain, which we're not going to go into. But we have we have the vacant land, we have the majority of the vacant land inventory for the Portland metropolitan region. Portland doesn't, Beaverton does. Gresham has some, and Troutdale has some. Portland has a little. Vancouver. But on the Oregon side, Hillsboro is the recipient by Metro of the majority of vacant industrial land. So our perspective is Hillsboro isn't doing business recruitment for Hillsboro. Hillsboro is doing business recruitment for the state of Oregon and the metropolitan area of Portland. So we have a recruitment program that works collaboratively around the region to bring new large investment to the Portland metropolitan area and to the state of Oregon. 4% of the state's general fund revenues come from direct and indirect Intel employees. 2% of the state's payroll taxes, income taxes come from Intel employees. Intel isn't a Hillsboro company. Hillsboro is a state of Oregon company. So we have 700 acres of vacant land that also comes with large lot restrictions. So when Metro moved the boundary, over half of that land needs to be can't be subdivided between lower than 50 acres. So we have over 5 sites that have to be single users of over 50 acres or over 100 acres. So we have this isn't Hillsboro's economic development program. Again, this is Metro's and the state. So we're fortunate to have that, but that's why we have a recruitment program, because the state of Oregon and the metropolitan area, that's part of a overall economic development strategy for an area. And so we're active in that, but we're also doing that collaboratively with the port, with the state, with GPI, with Portland General Electric, with Gresham, and we're all collaborating on a large lot recruitment strategy that's global in nature. We're talking about going across the world to find companies, because if you're going to do 50 or 100 acre users, you're going to be talking about companies that are going to invest over $1 billion easily, and you're going to be talking about global companies. So that's sort of the context for why we have a recruitment program in Hillsboro.
And I would parallel, I agree with everything Mark said. It's one reason why we don't prioritize industrial recruitment. We don't have big lots of land. We have a couple coming on board, but in general, our land is used. We have some brownfields and things we'd like to open up, certainly. But from a Portland perspective, we emphasize, and if we do recruit anything, it's talent. Because for the companies that are tending to locate to Portland, they're more knowledge-based, they're dense, and their biggest driver, not to suggest Intel talent isn't for Intel or even companies like Nike, but for certainly in some of our core industries, it's access to talent and how do you attract particularly millennials, many that are employed in some of our industries. So just different approaches. Again, it goes back to we play different roles within the region, and we have different strengths and weaknesses within the region.
One of Beaverton's roles is to be home to small and medium-sized businesses. So some of the suppliers that maybe provides goods and services to Intel might actually be located in Beaverton. So again, what's good for Hillsboro is good for the region, is good for the state.
So I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our panel for their wisdom and their knowledge that they shared with us. So let's give them a round of applause, please. I would like to be the first one to say that these are very approachable people. We've met with all three of their agencies. They were very, very easy to get a hold of, very, very kind to let us come in and sit down and talk with them. And time wasn't so valuable that they were looking at their watch the whole time we were talking with them. Their help to us was insurmountable. It saved us a ton of time and a ton of dollars. So I thank you so very much for your time today.
Thanks.
Thank you.